Hello, thank you for joining us for our 2022 Archives Month Hungry for History presentation, Face Value, the Art of Portraiture in the Municipal Archives. My name is Kelly Zakovic and I am an archivist here in the Municipal Archives. So this year, our Archives Month theme is Art in the Archives. Often, when you think about archives, you might think about this or this, yikes, or even this. But in reality, most archives hold a wide variety of record types and media, from books and manuscripts, maps, AV materials, photographs, and even works of art, all of which are important elements that help us document our lives and retell our histories for centuries to come. In this talk, I'm going to cover a brief history of portraiture, some of the main types of portraits that we have in the Municipal Archives, and showcase a few highlights from our collections. But in order to be able to talk about portraits, we have to know what they are. So here, a definition of a portrait is a painting, photograph, sculpture, or other artistic representation of a person, usually, I know some of us love our pet portraits, in which the face and its expression is predominant. So baby pictures, graduation pictures, wedding photos, party snapshots, and even modern selfies all share a common theme, the need to record and hold on to dear memories. Throughout history, we've attempted to record ourselves and others through whatever means are available. Cave paintings, hieroglyphics, oil paintings, sculptures, and most recently, photography. Portraits have been used as a means of identifying, knowing, or raising awareness about a person or group. Some portraits are employed like propaganda, familiarizing and lionizing public figures in the eyes of those who behold their image. Portraits, especially photographs, also can help audiences sympathize with the subject, be they children or civil rights movement heroes, for example. So whether we're looking at a ruler portrait or a family photograph, an artist has the ability to shape our perception and understanding of our subject through their artistic choices. So there's some debate about the origins of portrait art, but many historians attribute this cave painting, which was discovered in France, as the first portrait, dating to about 27,000 years ago. The ancient Egyptians also created very early portraits that represented in their funerary art, sculpture, and even wall paintings. This image of Queen Nefertiti, though she is highly idealized, is one of the most recognizable portraits in the history of art. Much of portraiture's early history is devoted to representation of kings and rulers, such as these of Alexander the Great, who is often shown as an idealized, godlike, youthful, virile warrior. Classical ruler portraits often incorporate recognizable tropes, poses, symbols, all of which remind their viewers of their status and often visually link them to their sources of power. Renaissance artists, such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael, produced some of the most lauded portraits in Western art history, creating dynamic images rich with visual symbols that tell us about the subject's status, political alliances, familial relationship, occupation, and more. Or, as is the case in perhaps the most famous portrait in the whole world, she might also leave us asking more questions than she answers. Before the advent of photography, it was often prohibitively expensive for the average person to have a likeness or portrait made. The skills of the artist making the portrait and the time required to sit for the portrait often limited the subjects to those with considerable wealth or social status. The advent of photography, though, brought with it an explosion of interest from consumers eager to capitalize on this new technology for their own personal image making. By the 1840s, photographic technology evolved to be able to capture an image with an exposure time that was much more practical for a subject to sit still and hold a pose. Having a photographic portrait made was still a considerable expense, though, and many people could only expect to have one photograph made of them in their lifetime. Photography studios flourished as the photographic process became more efficient throughout the 19th century, and in 1900, for example, Savannah was home to at least 7 photography studios, according to city directories. So these are a few of the early examples from our holdings. The image in the center is a ferrotype or tintype, which was popular in the 1860s and 1870s, but did remain in use throughout the turn of the century. Not only could they be made in just a few minutes, tintypes were sturdy and lightweight and could easily be carried in your pocket. The subject of this one is wearing a suit, and even though his face is somber, that's likely more of a reflection of the exposure time than his actual demeanor. The gentleman on the left is positioned in a static pose, common for studio portraits, and he's wearing his military uniform with his cavalry insignia prominently displayed, like likely something that was a point of pride for him. On the right, we have a portrait of Miss Addie Green, which is dated between 1918 and 1919, so right at the end of World War I, and she is proudly posing with her knitted American flag on her lap. As portraits became more and more accessible and photography transitioned from a documentary medium to an artistic one, portrait photography evolved as well. Portrait photographs are often categorized into four distinct types, which are here. Constructionist portraits, in which the artist directs the subject in a way that conveys an intended meaning, usually through attire, pose, and props. Environmental portraits feature a subject that is captured in their natural surroundings instead of a studio or artificial setup. George Ganem is seen here in his military bunks, for example. Candid photographs is where the subject is unaware that their photo is being taken. And this image is of W.W. Law speaking about Laurel Grove South Cemetery. Finally, we have creative images which go beyond a single frame taken with a camera and often incorporate other artistic elements in the final result. Studio photography is often the most common medium for constructionist portraits, and it's very often staid or somber, but can just as much be fun and spunky, akin to perhaps a modern glamour shot that some of us of a certain age might have taken in a shopping mall in the 1990s. In the W.W. Law collection, we have these examples of different subjects having their portraits taken in front of the same background. In the upper right, we have two examples of automobile studio portraits. Studio automobile portraiture became a really popular genre as vehicles became popular in American culture. These pictures are both serious and playful. The one on the left features a small child driving the car, but these women are wearing their finery. So they really are showing off their personalities. The other women are showing their personalities as well with their poses and attire in front of these fun, sort of festive backdrops. The woman on the top left is almost demure with her kind of closed off posture, but the woman below her is kind of sassily showing off and offering her high-heeled shoes to us. The young girl on the bottom right also conveys some sort of attitude with her hand on her hip, while the woman on the bottom left reclines to show the detail of her coat and shoes. One of my favorite studio portrait types are these tourist images from Tybee. I happen to love all things sort of campy and tacky tourist, so what could be better as a memento of your trip to the beach than posing with this scary alligator or propping your kid up on a fake dog. City employees are represented strongly in our collections, often in environmental portrait styles. Police and fire departments have a tradition of capturing headshots of their officers and firefighters, often published in an annual composite sheet, such as this one here in the center. On the bottom right, we also have a photo of the firefighters at the Henry Street station with their mechanized fire trucks decked out with flags and antlers. The two black and white portraits in the top left and on the right were photographed by Jack Lee for the 1990 City of Savannah Service Program and Budget publication. Lee is perhaps best known for his photograph of Bonaventure Cemetery that's featured on the cover of Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, in case his name sounds familiar to you. He was commissioned by Research and Budget to photograph various departments across the city organization at work. The photos feature often unseen and perhaps even underappreciated city workers, such as janitorial staff and water and sewer workers. And instead of lining them up on a stage or some bleachers, they're photographed in their place of work with their implements of their work, proudly showcasing what they do. I would be remiss also to not include the city's mayor's portraits. The city has portraits of many of our Savannah mayors hanging on our second floor rotunda of City Hall, all the way from our very first mayor, John Houston, through our last sitting mayor, Eddie DeLoach. And this portrait gallery is a tradition that was carried over from the City Exchange, which was City Hall's predecessor, and can be seen in this 1904 portrait of a city council meeting right here. These photographs are from the Park and Tree Commission records and date between 1925 and 1943. In that era, Bonaventure Cemetery and Laurel Grove Cemetery lot holders could apply to the Park and Tree Commission for a worker permit to have an individual care for their lots. In order to be approved, each applicant required a picture of the worker so that it could be identified when seen in the cemetery. In this era, it's also important to note that Bonaventure and Laurel Grove North were white-only cemeteries, and lot care applicants were predominantly Black. These photographs served as identification to prove that these individuals did in fact belong in the cemetery when they otherwise might not have been. Even in this sort of unlikely source, these photographs, this collection gives us some wonderful portraits, usually paired with the subject's names, so that if we wanted to, we could follow up and learn more about their lives or provide them to any descendants who inquired. And these aren't just DMV style photo IDs. These applicants submitted their real portraits, which are just rich with personality and pride. Photographic portraits were also documentary tools, which helped us learn and empathize with their subjects. These images from the Minus collection of glass plate negatives, which date from circa the 1880s through the turn of the century, show us African American subjects with implements of their daily life and work. The girls on the left have baskets, which are possibly filled with crabs and produce, resting on their heads. And the man and three children on the right have baskets in a tree trunk, mortar, and pestle, which possibly could have been used to process rice or corn. The photo of the three girls in particular, I think, really draws me in. I want to know what these little ladies are carrying. I've looked around in that photo to try to see maybe where they were in Savannah. You can almost just feel the weight of those baskets on their neck. But at the same time, their large hats in the shadows obscure their face, so their individual identities are sort of hard to tell. W.W. Law had an extensive collection not only of photographs, but also of paintings, prints, and drawings. He has several paintings from artist Jonathan Green, who is known for his vibrant abstract depictions of Gullah culture, such as this painting on the right. In his portrait here, Green is seated in front of a painting, presumably one of his own, and he's holding a palette and brushes. His status as artist, capital A, is on full display. I focus mostly on photographic portraits in this talk, but we do also hold some painted portraits, mostly again concentrated in the W.W. Law collection, mayor's portraits notwithstanding. So I'll sort of wrap up our mini tour through the archives with these two creative portraits, again from the W.W. Law collection. These two images are by James August Vanderzee, who is a leading figure and artist in the Harlem Renaissance. He produced possibly the most comprehensive photo documentation extant of the movement. His unique style incorporated a lot of darkroom experimentation, such as double images, composite photographs, and retouched portraits in order to convey his subjects in their best light or with the meaning that he intended. This portrait is dated from 1921 and is titled Memories. It's a composite image with a double exposed negative of a man staring into a fire with images of soldiers superimposed on the left, and the word memories is written under the soldiers. This image, perhaps without magnification, you might not think much of her jewelry or the ring on her finger, but upon close viewing, it reveals that these are actually drawn onto the negative. These added jewels not only sort of elevate the subject and make her very elegant, but they provide sort of a shining contrast to her skin, keeping your eye moving around the image and really indicating Van der Zee's close attention to composition in his imagery. So with that, I'm going to leave you with this final question. What would you include with your portrait? I hope as you go around, you might think a little bit more deeply about portraits. And thank you. Thanks for joining us.